I don't know what's best here. Here to most everybody.
How are you doing this evening? Good to see you.
Vitus, do you know Thomas? Thomas McNerney? This is Vitus Barry. That's the SDPA.
Hi.
Anyway,
How you doing?
architects know one another.
Surviving the weather?
You bet.
Today we're on the file from
We have a file.
Sounds like it was really good.
I'll be able to pull that
I think
up.
Rusty or something.
Get to that, and you can just, and the board has the agenda.
Okay.
And then we're actually live streaming as well, so when you get to it.
What?
Got something for you.
Just flip that on. Check 1, 2, check 1, 2.
I didn't want you to think I was.
Oh, the buzz, you mean, okay, yeah, good. You can make that your home. Oh, no.
So
I will understand if you, okay.
But it's not.
Oh, my neighbor.
No, not Brenda.
Oh, Nick.
Yes.
Good man, how are you?
Oh, Pete? Okay. Very good, gotcha.
Good.
Well, that's when he came over, he was
Yeah.
with me, and I was like.
Yeah, yeah, he was guiding my change.
How
Okay.
about you? Through your afternoon
Yes, I've met-
activities?
Matt and I were together.
Yeah, yeah.
And then just recently.
I believe that, you know, the students at Dover.
Yeah.
They did the road.
Brad, did you bring your ears? Did you bring your Mickey ears? Yeah. Did you come home with those?
What's that?
Did you come home with some?
I did, but maybe. I had many opportunities to be up on the lights.
Yeah.
Check 1, 2. Turn it up. I think you turned it off, Mike. There you go. There you
I think that's part of the live stream.
Test. What happens after that? Hey, you've been on your diet, huh? Good.
Just round two.
Good evening. Check. It's all yours. What else?
Just go closer.
And they do, there's a function on them. They sit for so long, and they, you know, silent. So all you gotta do is just hit the button real quick. Now.
Great, how are you? He's fine, so he has his gallbladder test tomorrow. Oh. It'll be great, it'll be fine. You're all good. I have some additional. Yeah. We had a big conversation on that. We all agreed that that's That Aaron pick up on. I can have.
My little cheat sheet. Yeah. I'm guessing where.
They had four grades and one and two line ups, so you're being jump second, third, and then all of you just fourth, fifth, grade. So it's hard. They have these two.
Two different.
No, they're on the same side.
Hi, Sarah, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, we can hear you as well.
That's my case was this should create for you and then it would just set the
Yeah, this was kind of. Right, even if we still went ours.
Plan, because we have a plan. Okay. So I wasn't, anyway, be happy just to talk through that. Yeah.
All right, I have 6 o'clock, so we're going to call this special session to order. Jessica, roll call.
Blend,
Here.
Mullen,
Here.
Williamson.
Here.
Hampton,
Here.
Husinga. Here. Maher,
Here.
Donnelly.
Here,
Any changes to the agenda?
No changes to the agenda.
Motion to approve agenda?
So move.
Second?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Blend,
Yes.
Mullen,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
Hampton,
Yes.
Husinga. Yes. Maher,
Yes.
Donnelly.
yes,
In 1 minute, we will start our public hearing on the proposed plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimated total cost on the Howe rooftop unit replacement project.
Okay, Thomas, thanks for being here. Thomas McInerney is our architect and has been working with the engineer, his engineer on this project for, this is specifically the rooftop replacement project on Central Campus at the house. So Thomas, you just let me know where you want me to be on this.
The mic there.
Yeah, the mic's, yep, right there. Neil, if you flip it on at the bottom there. Should have a red light that comes on.
My name is Thomas McInerney. I'm an architect from Iowa City, and I'm working with Innovative Engineers. And we've come up with some documents finished today that is the replacement of several mechanical units. If we go to the next page, there's actually a below here at the very lower left-hand corner. We have basic, very below that. It's just the scope of work is the project described as a replacement of roof-mounted HVAC units serving an existing structure known as the Howell Student Activities Building. We have 3 25-ton units and one of a 10-ton, and 3 that's 7.5 ton. We've got and 1 6.5, and we got 5-ton unit, a couple of those. So quite a few. This is overhauling the existing heating and cooling for the building. We had also included in the project the installation of a 5-ton split system, which with exposed ductwork would help with the excessive heating that we're having on the second floor. With those windows, we came up with a proposed idea of having a 5-ton system there to help with again the heating. But what we did discover though that there was an interesting little factoid that we found in the field, and it was basically one of the thermostats that was originally designed for the second floor was actually located on the main floor. So that may have been a part of the problem, but since you have so many windows there, it's best that we deal with it in the normal way of distributing the air directly onto the windows. So that's what we have in the project. So if we zoom out, this is just a safety code issue for the State Fire Marshal, and hopefully we get an exemption from review. But if we go to the next page, there we go, zoom out. We can see the variety of units that are hidden on top of the roof. You probably don't even know they're there. So, the center part here, is the taller portion of the building. We have these very large units up there that are serving the main gymnasium area. And we have these existing units on the north and along the west, and basically out of view. So you really don't see them because of the way of the angle of the viewing, and they're tucked away toward the center of the building. It's pretty much a flat roof, relatively flat, enough slope to provide drainage, and that's what you see in a lot of these little dots are just roof drains. And on the project, we are planning on replacing each of these units so that would help with, well, actually several of the units, if not, I believe most of them are not functional anymore. So it's necessary. It's been neglected quite a bit. The thing that we're adding that's additional would be this little condensing unit. It's just like what you would see in a very large home, about the same size, a 5-ton. And there's some penetrations, and this is on the upper, very top portion above the main assembly area below where the games are played. We figured that if you put anything up there, no one will ever see it. So that's the intent. So we're trying to be respectful of the look of the building without putting holes in it. If we continue on, it's probably just some reference material about the building itself. It shows a lot of glazing, but a lot of this glazing is actually deceptive in a way that it's actually more of just a look, and it's not really meant to view out. It's actually just a glass that you can't see through. Then we have metal panels that surround the building. The building in general is in very, very good condition, and I'm impressed with its upkeep. But unfortunately, it's been 20 some years, and so you're going to have an effect on your mechanical units that are going to eventually fail. So we are here to help on that. So if we go to the next page, it shows some details, and nothing of super interest other than penetrations to roof, stuff that architects get into. And then we go to the next page, we show the units hatched out where they're seen as being removed and replaced. And go to the next page. We show here where the unit is going to be, the new one is going to be exposed. When you walk up the south easternmost stairs, you'll go up the stairs and you'll actually see the unit suspended above. In this particular building, you have the structure is all exposed. And it's painted black, so it kind of blends in. So we're proposing to, in the documents, to have that all painted black so we don't really notice it. At the same time, somewhat within reach of the ladder so it can be maintenance. But this will have then a duct that goes all the way along here along the eastern, and then another one along the southern hallway of the track. Actually, this is the east running track, and then you got the south, and basically it extends to the north and goes around. But the more important thing is that this glazing has no direct ventilation being placed on it, which is kind of a strange thing because with all that windows, they should have addressed that. So this is a duct sock. It's or a fabric style duct system. So it won't look like your typical one. It looks like one. It's very similar to the one above us, except it won't have the diffusers. It's actually a type of fabric that blows through the fabric. And that way it gives an even distribution of heating and, or actually in this case, cooling for the facility. And we also found that we don't need to provide more fresh air as most typical systems would have because we have plenty coming in from the replaced systems, the 25-ton systems that are on top of the roof. What we see here is the existing ductwork that these large diffusers that you see when you're in the game, during the game, and the bleachers there is down below. So really it's all within about the only spot you can probably put it. And then it won't get in the way of people on the track. So that was the important thing. And then we got this little couple lines that go and service the condenser where the heat is expelled. And I think that's pretty much sums up the project. There really isn't much more than that. Except that we do have an estimated cost of $367,000. And because it's a renovation project, you're going to more likely discover something that might need to be an additional change order. So I would, if I was to estimate a cost, that the total cost, it would be $385,350. That's 5% more, and that just gives you your expectation that you should probably expect. Because we're gonna open something up, and it's like, oh, that's failing, or it may not. But I just don't like to. I don't want to fool anybody. When you're doing renovation projects, there's always something unexpected, and especially when you have these number of units being replaced. I mean, we can't even know. All we can do is anticipate that there's going to be probably a 5% change in the amount. But we're hoping that there won't be any problem. It will still just be the base amount of $367,000. That number hopefully can be lower, but that depends on the bidding environment. Any questions?
So we do, the other documents involved here would be the notice to bidders. Once this is approved, we will get this published on our website as required, and then Thomas will get it posted in the various plan rooms so that you can go out to bidders. We have a walkthrough scheduled and then a bid opening on February 20th. It's the pre-bid conference February 10th at 2 o'clock, and then
So the bid opening would be, the 20th, I believe it's at the top.
Yeah.
And it'll be at 2 PM. That should give us sufficient time. We've done some research on the availability of people to do the work here, so we should be able to get somebody. But it is a large enough project that it has to be publicly bid. So it will, because of the way our regulatory, the way the regulatory agencies are working through in this town because of the change of management and the sort, we're probably going to have a review of the state fire marshal on this project. So that's the reason for the egress paths and all that other stuff on the second page. And so that typically wasn't required before, but in general, it was done in a different manner. But this is the process of the state fire marshal office is that they do a preliminary review of one sheet, this code review sheet, and that's what we're doing here. Now, the code has changed since the building was designed. So it's slightly different, but in general, because the building is fully sprinkled, and it's 2 stories, we have nothing really to worry about. And we meet the code of today, we're just underneath the allowable limit for the size of the building. So, and that's not using any other tricks to increase the allowable area, which we can because we have room for a fire truck around most of the building. And we do have a fire barrier between the new portion of the building and the existing building, which is, I believe it's the one to the west. I forget the address. It's on Broadway.
Yeah, the student union.
Yeah, and that's the older building, and that's connected to it, but it has a fire resistant barrier that treats it like a different building. So we're okay on that side. But in general, it has plenty of exits, and so there's nothing that will trigger a additional review for safety reasons. So the building was designed fairly well, except for the windows, just point.
The other document that's here and that you have in your packet is the actual form of contract. And the form of contract has been reviewed by our attorney. She took a look at it and has signed off on it, said everything looks good, everything that she needs in that document is there. And so once we have the bid and know who the contractor will be, this is the form of contract that we will use.
So the duct work on the second floor, east side, is cool. We don't have.
You don't have a heating issue. It's,
All the windows.
yeah, because of the heat gain from the morning sun, it's during the summertime, and it seems like that's the main primary issue. So it's like we need more cooling, and it's again, it may have been part of the reason, may have been related to the issue that the thermostat was somehow, one of the main units was on the wrong floor, and so you're gonna have a different operation. Over these years, it may have maybe not had a positive effect, but again, that's only like a theory that we have. And we didn't want to say, well, all we gotta do is just move the thermostat, we're okay. But again, there isn't any ductwork along the east. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, we haven't seen anything like that before in a modern building. So it does make a lot of sense to provide a duct that will follow the perimeter and evenly cool the space as the duct sock or fabric duct will do.
When will that always look inflated? That's all.
Yes, we got the rigid form. We made sure that that's in there. So it's going to be a fabric tension system will be required for it, because that's one thing I don't, none of us like to see is this drooping drape. It's like, well, when it's on, it floats, it inflates, but no, we definitely have something that was anticipated.
And that's, as you know, that's what we have in the gymnasium as well as the duct sock with the rigid structure inside.
Ductsock is a company based out of Dubuque, so it's an Iowa company. There is another manufacturer based out of Alabama, but they will be competitive bids, and we'll look at anybody else who is interested. But those two should do fine. I've been impressed ever since it's been 20 years. I've been specifying ductstock, and I like the idea that there's in Iowa, and it's actually it has a couple other features. It reduces the amount of reflection of sound because of the hard duct. This will reflect sound and bounce it around. But especially when you have a lot of hard surfaces in that building, it will help, if anything. It won't add to the problem.
Does the board have any questions for Thomas on this, the RTU replacement project?
Yeah, does this include the commissioning, the initial startup of the units?
Correct. It will include a test and balance system. So you'll have a test and balance system because you put these things on there, they better be the analysis. We do have on one of the sheets, we have a layout of the existing ductwork that's there, at least what was planned. Actually, I think it's more like a shop drawing that was given to us. So we dug into the original designer. We were able to find the documents, even though their company was sold and merged with another one. We actually were able to contact the company, and they dug out the drawings, and they gave us some valuable information that allows us to now have the mechanical contractor, who that may be, to be able to then point to the items being served. So,
What's your estimated time element?
that's a good question. The thing is, since these last 5 years, it's been challenging to have large equipment being made in a timely way. So that's why the way we have anticipated completion date is in July 1, because the amount of ordering, to order the units, it may take up to 12 weeks and possibly longer. So I would count on the longer part. It's just the way it is. I mean, just to manufacture those types of items, you definitely have to get in the order as soon as you can.
Any other questions? In this, before you have public comments, this project, we would fund from our likely our penny sales tax, infrastructure dollars, or PEPAL. Would not be, obviously wouldn't be a general fund item, but we would use our infrastructure dollars to pay for this project.
All right, any questions or comments? Or that you wanted to know about here? All right. So we will move on to new business, and our first item is consideration to approve proposed plan specifications, form of contract, and estimated total cost of the Howe rooftop unit replacement project. Is there a motion to approve?
Also,
Second? Jessica, roll call?
Blend,
Yes.
Mullen,
Yes.
Williamson,
yes.
Hampton,
Yes.
Kusinka,
Yes.
Maher,
Yes.
Donnelly.
Yes.
That's a yes.
The next item on our agenda is consideration to approve the transportation facility project change order.
And Thomas, while you're here, Thomas is our architect as well on the transportation facility, transportation buildings and grounds, central receiving. I appreciate that Mike and Derek have been able to attend our progress meetings, so they're a bit familiar with this particular change order. It contains a couple of different things. I'll let Thomas walk through it here. The change order is as follows, and so I'll let Thomas take it from here.
Yeah, so one of the things that happens in construction is that there is sometimes there's a how you get the best number requires you to from a bidder is to provide the lowest cost item. So they provide the lowest cost item, and we gave a list of manufacturers. And then those manufacturers, we had the approved manufacturer only offered a certain type of voltage for the unit, which is unknown to us because they will change their style of manufacturing without giving us a memo. So in the purpose of getting a lower number, we ended up, within the bid, the contractor provided something that needed a different type of wiring. And so we had to wire basically the makeup air units, the mechanical item, which was, it's a fraction of the price here, the 14,000, it's around 5,000, it's less than $5,000 to rewire each of the buildings in a different manner to a three-phase system, which we have available on site. It's just, it's not the same type of wiring that's needed or was expected. So that's what we would recommend, doing the upgrade to those units to provide power for those. And also when we are talking about the upgrading the outlets for the ground fault interrupting circuit, because of the previous authority having jurisdiction has changed hands and now it's going to the state. The state has a little bit more rigid interpretation of what's required. So if you have a garage door in your building, you have to put GFIC circuits throughout in that room. Well, that's most of our buildings. And so what happens is that based on the recommendation from the contractor and making us aware of the regulatory change, we don't want to do it after we already installed. We want to do it before, because we'll save a lot more money rather than waiting later and finding if he's going to, if what we anticipate, they will look at it this way. Now, this is something that we did not have to do a few years ago. It would not have been on the radar because this is the use of this is not really for garage storage, it's just for temporary maintenance, and exposure to water is very limited. Even though we have a storage building that says storage, those doors are meant for receiving stuff on pallets without having a loading dock. But that doesn't matter. So if you do the strict interpretation of a garage door, then you have a garage, so you need to have an upgrade. And so that's why we would recommend moving ahead and just upgrading the outlets to GFIC. It won't change anything on the floor plans, it's just wiring different. And then the other item here on number 2 is that it came to our understanding that the high lift doors were a lot less money than we thought they would be. It would be more, it would be easier for us for the operation, for repairs, and that the doors would be high lift. So the door, instead of going up in straight, flat level, like in most your residential style homes, these doors will actually lift up and go tie up against the ceiling. So, which we have that height, and for a few $100s, we were per door. It's $275 per door. It was thought that would be a great way to prevent the potential for maybe a collision course with a bus that's on a jack. But that's a very unusual situation, but that could happen. Or whatever the case is, we're trying to minimize the impact. And whereas before we thought the high lift doors typically were priced out of range, we're trying to save money, but for $275 each, we'll do them for the bus maintenance areas. So that's what we would recommend. And then in the wash bay, it became a very low cost item. I believe it was only $60 per eye. They will be more durable with the washing of chemicals versus the standard type of eye that you may have. Now, there's a debate about whether it would make a difference, but in the fact that we're not sure who's going to be doing the washing in the future, these eyes will have more durability. So these are relatively small modifications for the size of the project. If you look at the actual ad of $15,586 and some change, it's still, we're at 0.55% of the project as original cost. So if we can keep that below 1%, that will be an unusually successful project, because even for new projects, things don't quite fit, or we make changes based on changes of priorities. And that's why we recommend to increase the amount to pay for these things and anticipate the need for it to meet the state fire marshal code. And also because it became, it became evident to us that the contractor needed more time if you want to keep the parking lot free from construction traffic. And with the weather we have, if we can extend that further out, that means they don't have to be on top of that, driving over heavy equipment over and over and wearing out the existing concrete, or the concrete that is supposed to be poured out there. So if we can pour that in the very end of the project, we'll have nice, clean driveways to each of the buildings versus having it kind of buggered up because it's been exposed to the elements and contractor activity. So that versus just buses. So that's where the contract was is recommended to extend it to May 30th as the substantial completion date. And that will, again, we believe there'll be a more investment for something that it would not have to be marred in its appearance. So it'll look good, it'll look good, it'll look like what you're getting for. So.
Yeah. You can see the original contract sum, $3,028,298. And we've had a few adds, and we've actually had some deducts as well. So the total cost, as Thomas mentioned, would be an increase at less than 1% of $3,044,870.90. And a substantial completion date of May 30th, which again it's probably, I mean, we really probably were not going to make that transition from the current facility to this facility until the end of the year. And so I don't see that as an issue at all. And again, just so everybody knows, this project as well is funded by our infrastructure dollars, paying sales tax, couple dollars, not a general fund item, and this is how we're funding this project. So I would recommend that you approve the change order.
Did anybody have any questions?
The change comes because of the state is telling us.
The state has
That's a change from before we started the project.
correct. It happened with, I believe it's Jack Swarm, but left as, yeah, he used to be the inspector and he was approved to do basically what the state fire marshal would do. And now when it comes to electrical inspections, he's no longer there. And his, again, it's about we're anticipating the enforcement by certain inspectors. We just don't want to be in a situation where well, one inspector says it's okay, or the other one doesn't. It just seems like if we don't do it, we'll get that one inspector who says, no, you got to replace it. It'll cost us, I believe, twice as much to replace it, not more. It's a gamble, but at the same time, you'll have GFI outlets, so it's a little bit safer, but a little overkill, if you ask me, but.
Any other questions? Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve the transportation facility project change order?
I also move.
Second.
Jessica, roll call.
Lynn,
Yes.
Mullen,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
Hampton,
Yes.
Husinka,
Yes.
Maher,
Yes.
Donnelly.
Yes.
Thanks, Thomas.
Now we are moving on to the work session items and facilities master plan process update. Vitus and Dan, thank you for joining us.
Vitus, you just let me know where you want to be in the scroll here.
Sounds good. My name is Vitus Barry. I'm with SVPA Architects. We've been assisting the district with facility assessments, master planning, so forth for several years now. Thought I would just talk a little bit about the process, the overview of the process that we've been through, where we are in that process. In October of 2021, we were hired by the district to do a facility assessment of all of the district's existing buildings. which we did, and that document's available for further review. In February, following that facilities assessment, February of 2022, we looked at several different master plan options based on that facility assessment. Those included a wide variety of things from, we had several different scenarios for elementary attendance centers. We had scenarios for doing middle school out of the high school campus. That was part of the original vision. We had scenarios for relocating some of the athletic facilities to the high school campus. So there was multiple options that were studied at that time. In January of 2024, the district purchased the Iowa Wesleyan Central Campus. And as part of that decision, there was some evaluation of the Howe building, which you just heard about in terms of the mechanical upgrade and some of the other facilities on that building. And if I recall, and you correct me if I'm wrong, the purchase price for those buildings was around $1.1 million. So really a great investment, in my opinion, on the district, because you got a fairly new gymnasium athletic. The Howe facility was really the athletics facility, so you had a nice sized gym. And then the chapel, one of the things we did look at in the master plan was putting an auditorium in the future, maybe 5 years, 10 years down the road. So to buy an auditorium and a gym for $1.1 million plus other facilities was a pretty good price. So following that purchase in September of 2024, the board approves a master planning process for us to go back and revisit that. While we had already looked at several different options, things were different now because the central campus had been purchased, and there had been some discussion at the board level about some of what your priorities are moving forward. And so we were asked to do an updated master plan with that. In October of 24, before we started in on this latest version of the master plan, we wanted to kind of just do a check with the district on what are the funding scenarios that might be possible for a project or for a 10-year, we were looking at options for things going out 10 years. What's the range of magnitude that's reasonable to be focusing in on? And at that time, visited with Piper Sandler. The district doesn't have any existing general obligation debt, so you're debt free in terms of borrowing for building projects. Looking at a typical one question bond vote would be for $2.70 per thousand valuation. So order of magnitude, if that was something the board was interested in doing, would raise about 25 to 26 million. You've got SAVE funds that come in every year. Those, you can use some of those for facility projects. Some districts will borrow against a percentage of that income and then save the rest of the income for routine things like mechanical system updates and so forth. And the estimate there was roughly 11 million option in SAVE money. The district is doing well in terms of some cash reserves. So order of magnitude discussed at that time was 35 to 40 million. Just to kind of make sure that if we're thinking about projects, we're not looking at something that's going to cost 80 million. But there's some flexibility there in terms of what funding sources you want to use for the project between PEPAL, sales tax save money, and any general obligation bonding. So that brings us to what's highlighted here, which is between October of 24 and January of 25, we've developed some master plan concept options that we'll go over with you tonight. We've had a leadership committee. There's probably 20, 25 people on that are administrators in the buildings, teachers, some board members. We've had, I think, sort of a series of 4 meetings with that group, and we continue to make progress on refining and looking into options. So the next step in the process will be in February to have Harley Nelson put together some costs to these various options. So we may have 15 options to look at and discuss as a group. We're going to want Dan's team to put some costs on those so that if we have $50 million worth of 20 options, we're going to need to start prioritizing and figuring out what are the most important priorities for you initially and what might be deferred over a 5 or 10 year process in terms of a master plan. So then in March, the intent is to review those options with the costs and get some board and community feedback. I think, obviously we want to have both, here's what a scenario might look like, here's what a potential cost for the scenario would be, what do we think our priorities are moving forward, get some feedback, and then ultimately confirm those project priorities and complete the master plan in April 2025. So that's kind of a quick overview of the last 4 years of work. Any questions on that? So next I wanted to hit on school board goals for the master plan. Back in September of 2024, when we were engaged to do this new master plan, there was some specific strategies that the board was interested in focusing on. One of those was to consolidate and provide modernized elementary school facilities. We currently operating 4 elementary attendance centers. Next was to maximize opportunities to repurpose and expand the use of Central Campus. It's a new asset that you purchase at a great price, has some great facilities. So what's the best and highest use for those? There was some discussion at the board level about looking at an opportunity for a collaborative early childhood center program. We're seeing statewide some focus on this in terms of trying to have a better integration between a daycare center and a pre-K center, to where, if you're running half-day preschool programs, parents don't have to make arrangements to get their kids transported for the other half of the day to a separate daycare facility. So we've worked on several of those projects, and it was in the governor's sort of focus things for this year is to really enrich that kind of a process. There was a discussion about consolidating other district programs and buildings. For example, the central office is currently leased. I think that's $50,000 a year in leasing. The homeschool assistance program is in that same lease. And then Wisdom Quest is housed in the current central receiving and the facility that's being replaced with the new project that's currently under construction. So we've been looking at opportunities to consolidate some of those other district facilities that may no longer need to be maintained and used. And then last but not least, options to utilize property that was acquired on the south side of Maple Leaf Athletic Complex. I think there was some ground that came with the Iowa Wesleyan purchase that gives you some flexibility for other athletic uses down there. So those were kind of the marching orders of the goals that we've been sort of looking back to as we've been through each of these leadership committee meetings. So I'd be happy to answer any questions on those. If not, then we'll jump right into the list of things that we've been looking at. Good to go?
Yeah.
All right, here's where you can bring up the drawing images though. So we'll start off at the high school.
You want this one?
Well, you can start with this one. So as I mentioned, Wisdom Quest is currently in the central storage receiving maintenance facility. There was some discussion about bringing Central or Wisdom Quest out to the high school campus, but keeping it as its own independent structure. There's been some discussion at the board level about trying to collaborate with the building trades program, and maybe there's some opportunity that they could be involved in the construction of that. So the site that we've looked at for that would be up to the northeast. So this is about a 4,000 square foot program. We had a focus group meeting with the leader of that program, and I should preface all of this before I start. This is all very preliminary. These aren't final plans. These are concepts to get an idea of cost order of magnitude. So if the district decides to go through with any of these, there'll be a full range of design input and services like schematic design. We'll look at more details on what the needs are. But at a master planning level, we want to get space needs program, size, concept. So the first plan that was there, take a look at this box, go back one page. This was a concept plan that basically shows 2 classrooms, common space, a couple of offices, some restroom and support spaces. And this was a program that we went through again with the principal, the director of that program. So that's about 4,000 square feet. Next item on the high school, there's been some discussion about an outdoor classroom or a greenhouse type of structure that would be located out near the garden. I think there's been some previous proposals by that teacher of that program. This, I think from our last discussion, this is probably not gonna actually be a master plan project. It's one that you're just working on.
Right.
But it was something that was discussed in the master plan. I think it's a smaller project that just may occur when the time's right. And then most recently, there's been some discussion about the potential benefits of putting a synthetic turf practice playing field out at the high school. Exact location isn't been vetted, but the idea of having synthetic turf here that would allow for, a wide variety of practices would be worth looking at. So we're going to do some cost estimating on that. We've been doing some outdoor athletic master planning for Iowa City schools, and they've been looking at City High. They've got a synthetic turf soccer field, and their feedback to us is that that particular field is the most in high demand, and it's just constantly being used by a wide variety of programs in the community. So those are items at the high school that we talked about. Is there any questions on those? All right, next on the list is Maple Leaf. We've talked about two different options at Maple Leaf. So this is the existing football track. This is the ground that was acquired as part of the Wesleyan purchase. And really, we've talked about two different scenarios for that ground. One would be to make upgrades to have a competition soccer field at that location. That would likely be a grass field, minimal support spaces. We're not thinking major concessions or restrooms or bleachers. I think a lot of spectators are on their folding seats or in the cars. And so trying to keep that fairly simple and economical. But as you can see from the rendering of the graphic, full-size competition field will fit that ground. There's not a lot of extra room, but it will fit it. The second item that we've talked about for that particular location would be an indoor practice field house. So this would be a large pre-engineered type metal building structure that would allow you to have synthetic turf practice surfaces. What we've illustrated here is basically a half of a football field in an end zone with some support spaces. You'll have restrooms, storage. You might have one flexible use room for instruction or community use or some variety of things there. So field house will also fit well on that site. A lot of extra room, but that's something, again, we're going to get some feedback from Carl Nelson on potential cost estimates. This particular version's, I want to say about between 45 and 50,000 square feet. All right,
Is that inflated, you say, or is that structural?
this would be more structural. I think Dan's talked at our last committee meeting about some of the options for air-supported inflated structure. Maybe he'll give some cost differentials between those. I think the air-supported system may be less money up front, but a little more to maintain in terms of heating costs and ventilation costs.
There might also be some other options if you zoom out. We just had some, more spitballing that whether it be parking lot or extra practice field, there's also the northeast corner of our lot that may be better positioned for if we would choose that we wanted to add that type of facility that it will fit there, but it doesn't have to go there. We could repurpose it. So there has been some, we haven't really talked cost, but there's some other options within the Big League Athletic Complex to possibly add that would be a help.
So the next series of slides address the elementary programs. In one of our earlier leadership committee meetings, we had some discussion about what would make sense in terms of affordability and size and how grade levels might be distributed. And I think there was consensus that at this time, we probably don't have, the funding source that I talked about earlier. It's probably not realistic to do an entirely new brand new elementary school out on central campus connected to those facilities. So there was a fair amount of discussion about if we need to go from 4 attendance centers down to 5 attendance centers to 2. What would make the most sense? The Salem is about 12,000 square feet, Lincoln and Harlan are both about 20,000 square feet, and Van Allen's about 40, so I was right first time 4. And so I think based on space needs programs and how you might split grade levels, we thought Van Allen might make the most sense because of the square footage that's available, the size of the site, and the number of students that would want to be served there. So there was some discussion about doing pre-K through kindergarten and first, so 3 grades at Van Allen. And then one of the goals that the board had was to look at an early childhood center option. So we've been studying some different scenarios for pre-K through first plus early childhood at Van Allen. And the remaining grade levels, 2nd through 5th, we've been studying options at Central Campus. So we'll start with the Van Allen site. Well, maybe I'll. So this is a summary spreadsheet. We've got kind of a detailed planning. We've got a lot of early childhood centers, and we've got a detailed planning process that goes along with sort of staff to student ratios and square footages. And so this is just a cover sheet of a more in-depth document. But just wanted to highlight the current child care center in town has about 45 kids enrolled. It's got a maximum capacity based on its square footage of 67. And there's, I believe, 11 staff at that facility. There's been some discussion that, again, this is all preliminary, but there seems to be a sense of cooperation that group might be interested in operating the daycare center at the Van Allen site. So we talked through options for giving you a little bit of improved capacity. I will point out one of the challenges that came up during our discussion, at least for them, is staffing. So you can see they're currently, I think they've got higher demand at the earlier age levels, the infants and toddlers and 2-year-olds, but right now they're having some challenge with attracting and retaining staff. Maybe that would be improved in a new facility that's connected with the elementary school. So the program for the early childhood center is to kind of have 2 rooms for the infant toddlers, or those may be 2 areas with a shared crib space. That would get you a capacity of 16 there. Transition in 2s, the ratio is 1:14, and we have two rooms and some shared space between them. That would serve 28 kids at about 1,500 square feet. And the 3-year-olds would be 1 room, and that ratio is 1:20. And the 4-year-olds would also be one room, and that's a ratio of 1:24. Then there was some discussion that the 5-year-olds, a lot of times a preschool or a daycare center will have a before and after wraparound program. We figured we could save a classroom in terms of square footage and use existing space at Van Allen for that before and after wraparound. It might be cafeteria, gymnasium, or one of the classrooms. So that saves some space there. So all that said, capacity would be about 88. If you add the before and after, that's closer to 118. That's another 40 capacity for before and after, and a little over 11,000 square feet of space. So for that, we'll jump in and look at the Van Allen site concept. So as with most elementary schools, particularly urban elementary schools that are on a limited site, drop off, pick up, bus traffic is usually pretty congested. If we add a building addition off to the northeast corner, this is that program for the Early Childhood Education Center. That would be about an 11,500 square foot building. It's going to have its own parking demand. We look at opportunity for it to have its own separated pickup, drop off, parent park, bring the kids in, kind of a loop. So that's this configuration here. Those programs come with their own specialized requirements for outdoor playground spaces, some, for the really little ones up to the 2-year-olds and 4-year-olds. So there's 3 different playground spaces that would support those programs. And then when we went through the spacings program at Van Allen with pre-K through first grade, one of the challenges that we heard in most of the elementary facilities is having the gym serve as the cafeteria and programming overlap between lunch service and PE, and just do a movie with that. So there's an addition proposed in the northwest of about 6,400 square feet. That would have a designated cafeteria space and then a relocated music room and some other restroom support functions. We'll go over that plan. And this is very high level concepting. It's a little different than what we looked at last week. It would look at a service loop coming in that could stack. You could have stacking, quite a bit of length or pick up stacking, and then would do a loop so that you're on the passenger side of the car for getting in and out. There was some concern about, previously we had this loop going all the way through the staff parking. There was concern about parent drop-off pickup clashing with staff trying to get in and out. So we tried to keep those separate. So that's a little update from our meeting last week. That would require some rethinking of the playground space. I think you still have plenty of acreage, if you will, green space available to accommodate those playgrounds. But it would kind of keep all your playgrounds centralized on campus. Thought would be that you would still stick with bus pickup, drop off the south, but at least we get the buses separated from the parents and the staff. And look at a secure entry improvement as well. That would be part of the plan concept. So I guess before we jump into the diagrams, if you will, on the floor plans, is there any questions on the site? All right, we'll jump to the floor plans. We've been through, 2 or 3 iterations, fine tuning of this. Start with a very basic layout of the daycare portion. So it would have its own separate entry, secure entry, which would be completely separate from Van Allen. So there'd be some place for admin and for secure entry. And then Z is like movement matters, which is like a gross motor room, which is part of a daycare. You have to have places like a PE room. So basically this has the 0, the infants. Again, this will probably have a shared crib space. Not all of that age group needs cribs, about half of them would. We've got the 2-year-old programs. And again, as this gets further development, a lot of times in that age, we'll have a shared restroom or changing stations. It's sort of 2 areas that have common support services between them. Then you've got a 3-year-old room and a 4-year-old room. We talked there'll probably be some other door separating Van Allen. I mean, both groups will want to get out for recess. This will be the required exit. So somewhere in here there'll be a secure point where folks from the preschool or the daycare program can't wander back into Van Allen. So I'll just kind of go around the horn on Van Allen. The next age group up is your pre-K program. And we look at the need for 3 pre-K rooms. Those would include a restroom and then 1 pre-K IEP or special ed room. Doesn't need to be quite the same size. For the overall building, we thought it would be wise to have 1 flex room, and that could be for different teaching styles, or if you had a bubble class come through, some unique programs that require some flexibility. So there's 1 located there. Looks like we've got the changing room that we talked about. And this was previously the art room in the facility, and the group thought it was a good place to have the art room, and has a designated place for Kelm. So that those principals, teachers that were in Van Allen thought that would be a good step, is to take that back and use it for art again. We're looking at 6 kindergarten rooms, and those would be on the south wing. This would be the update to the secure lobby or secure entry. Again, this is a work in progress. No problem. So the idea would be you'd have a a secure vestibule. Before you got into the building, you would have to buzz in the lobby. So this would be the point where staff would check a guest in and make sure they're good to go. So they would come in, check in, and then they would have access to the school. We switched the nurse location based on our meeting last week. Got 2 offices, the flex meeting. We added the mother's room, which was requested, and then we moved what was on the meeting rooms, the conference room over, instructional coaches and guidance. This is the current teacher break room, work room. They wanted to keep that. Right now, this is music, so that's the one piece that we thought we would need to relocate. Gym would stay, mechanical room, title, media center. One of the things generally that was important to the staff there was they call it the flow in terms of kids that need to go to different programs throughout the day, whether it's a special ed resource, gym, to try to have those more centralized. So a lot of the, some of those support spaces, special ed, tag, therapeutic room, ESL, we've got those more centralized in the plan, so kids coming from either wing, it makes just a little more sense in terms of flow. Moving up, we've got 6 first grade rooms. And then the addition would include cafeteria space. And as we get into further development, if this plan is something the board's interested in pursuing further, we need to look at some storm safety options. Depending on which code and which official is looking at it, there's different requirements for FEMA storm rated shelters. So this might be an opportunity if you don't have storm safe space to think about it in the new construction. We've got the music piece, some storage, miscellaneous support spaces, janitorial data, staff restroom. And then we did add one more restroom core that would be more convenient for the first graders. Because there's been some concern about just adequacy of restrooms in the facility. So that's the overview on Van Allen. Any questions? All right, we'll jump on to Central Campus. This is the last item we have to go over for you tonight. So maybe zoom out just a little bit. We'll talk about the overall campus. I think most of you are familiar. This is the Howe building. That's the newest building, it was 2000. That has the gymnasium athletic complex. This is the Wesleyan Student Union building. It housed their cafeteria, media centers, and their offices. I think that's like 1956 vintage. Pretty stout building in terms of concrete structure, but it will likely have some issues that need to be upgraded, particularly mechanical, electrical, things that you already started on how. This is the chapel. This is Old Main. This is the original Pioneer building. And then there's currently what was the PEO library at that location. So basically we have approximately 65,000 square feet between the Howe and the Student Union building that we've looked at options for repurposing, some renovation. And then we've looked at, we kind of were challenged about the site. What are the options for how the site might work? So this was option A, which would have an approach for parents, visitors from the east. We come in kind of to Central Campus and look around, sort of visible main front door would be on the east side. We thought it would be beneficial to look at some staff parking where the PEO building was. I think there was some high-level analysis that that's a really cool old building, but it has some pretty major challenges in terms of accessibility and usability for your programs. It's just not a great fit for elementary type programs, and might be an opportunity because we will need some additional parking on site, so we studied that. So this would have a classroom wing here and a classroom wing here. I mean, I think one of the concerns with this scenario is we're really kind of eating up the middle part of campus. So this kind of takes away some of that green space. Your likely area for play space would probably be to the northwest, which might not be ideal in terms of prevailing winds and winter conditions. So that was option A. Option B was, let's look at having the main entrance to the west, which is, Broadway's a little bit more of a primary street. This is a little bit more of a, put the buildings in an urban setting, a little closer to the base of the street to try to preserve more of the central part of campus. Again, we looked at putting parking here. And you see the plans, there's some options to look at relocating the central office and getting out of Valley's and doing that in this corner of the building. So this was updated since we last met. We'll go over that tonight, but that's about 47,800 square feet, two-story building. Again, it kind of protects what will likely be the playground space more to the interior side of campus. We had a great discussion about pros and cons of both. We went through we had some differing opinions. Like I like A, I like B. We talked about it for about a half hour, 45 minutes. Then I think as that meeting went on, we got to a unanimous consensus amongst that group that option B was the preferred site and flow on campus. If you guys have questions, comments, on the various scenarios that we looked at from a site perspective?
But we definitely need to look at the car pickup and drop off line there, so you've got that on the south.
Yeah,
And then the buses on the west side, because there's gonna be fewer buses than cars.
yeah, that was one of the feedback that came out of that meeting. If you zoom out even a little further there, John, the idea was if we had a very lengthy backup, we don't want cars backing up on Broadway. Initially, we're thinking this would be the parent side and this would be the bus side. The feedback from that last week's meeting was, let's look at parent pickup and drop off to the south. And, you could set up the flow of that parking lot that, more of the traffic may be coming off the primary street, Broadway. You could set a pattern for pickup that they would queue all the way around the backside of that and come up and pick up as it's their turn. So you have a lot more space for queuing in that south parking lot.
Yeah, I definitely like that. I mean, you got it updated. It's not updated in the online documents
No.
yet, but this is the new.
So, thanks for pointing that
David's
out.
been working his butt off Friday.
No, yeah, absolutely. The documents that are online, as I mentioned to you all, I didn't have these documents, as Vida said, Damien's been working on them, so I received them, just as between the end of school and the meeting. So, the documents that are on the website are the ones that we discussed on Thursday at that meeting.
All right, we'll hit the floor plan options. So we zoom back out just a little bit. So this was option A. This would have the entrance to the east. We looked at the main secure entry. This would be kind of the front facade of the building, if you will. A secure point coming in through here, which would align with the north-south corridor coming up through the house. That could really be a secure point before you get elsewhere in the building. I think we had second and third grade wings on the first floor. Music programs. We were looking at art here. So that's kind of a high over level view. If you want to zoom in, this is the same in both options, but we've studied several different scenarios for district, the central office for district. This one's, I think, seems to make the most sense in terms of it fits the square footage right. It could be separate and secure. So that would be its own entry vestibule, reception, check-in, some conference rooms, and then all of the various office support functions that are at central office now, along with break rooms and restrooms. When we get up to the second floor, I mean, this would really keep the gymnasium as is. I mean, I think it's going to be a great asset for the district. Certainly will be dedicated for the elementary school use throughout the day, throughout the week, but certainly opportunities, weekends, evenings, if there's some community use programs, that will be, we don't need to talk about that tonight, but that may be an opportunity in terms of how you decide to make that space available beyond just school activities. I think it would be a great opportunity for that. So if we jump up to the second level, This would be a similar layout that houses one wing of fourth grade,
Sure.
a fourth grade wing, a fifth grade wing, and then, like I mentioned at Van Allen, trying to keep some of the special ed, flex spaces, resource reading, keep those a little more centralized. And then there would be a connection point to the existing student union building at the cafeteria level. We think that, you know, we're going to recommend that you keep the kitchen space and get new equipment and get it functioning again. It's a great space for food service. The cafeteria is a really welcoming, nice space that's in that building. And then the media center, those were good, sort of common central use type spaces. And then on the second floor, on the north end, there's been some discussion about boardroom and maybe staff development training rooms. We talked a little bit in our meeting last week about do we want to put art over in that location, and again, a good discussion and decision to keep art in the new top secret space. I'll show you shortly. So at the meeting last week, we had developed one of the scenarios. We kind of assumed a footprint for the other scenario. That was the one that the group was leaning towards. So we spent some time Friday and today trying to get some ideas for this meeting. Again, this is a work in progress. It's just preliminary. So we'll go to option number 2. Zoom out just a little bit. So in this case, you saw the bus loop off of Broadway. The idea would be to have a main entrance facing west towards that public street, try to kind of align the architecture between the existing student union building and what I would call a nicer part of the facade for the, like, this is the front of your school, this is the entry. We have maybe we can zoom in a little on that central core space. Maybe a little bit up. And up just a bit. There you go, that's perfect. So again, you have a secure entry where you come in through a vestibule. You would need to go into the office to check in before you can get into the building. We have an admin workroom that could be accessible from the lobby, or that's where the teachers come in for some of the copying or mailboxes. It's got access there. The 2 offices, conference room, flex meeting. We heard from our other discussions, we want the nurse area in or adjacent to the central office. So we've got nurse here, in-school suspension, staff restroom, storage, another room. Seclusion room was talked about in each of the facilities in case, you know, there was significant cool down that needs to occur. And then this would be kind of a central spline or a nicer lobby space that connects the 2 buildings. So it might have be a 2-story, or portion of it would be 2 stories with an opening from the first floor to the second floor to kind of have a higher volume over this connector. This would be kind of an open central commons with a stair element that's visible with kind of doing an L shape going up. Then we've got second grade, what I call the east wing, third grade going north with special ed, reading resource, you know, some of those specials all geared towards the connector of those 2 wings. So maybe if we look at down at the student union portion, again, we're thinking about central office on the north side. We're looking at 2 music rooms for music programming in their various offices and practice space. We like the idea of this being a multi-purpose or staging place, like kids are coming or going from the bus, or it could be potentially a community room that has access where you don't have to get into the whole building. So we left that as multi-purpose. We've got guidance tag, ESL, instructional coaches. So again, some of these central programs that serve all the students located centrally. Last but not least, we'll jump up to the second floor. So second floor again would have 4th and 5th grade wings. We did, on both floors, we added a second restroom having one big game restroom in the middle. We thought it would be good to have maybe just a couple of fixtures fewer in two different locations. So, fifth grade has its own place to go and fourth grade has its own place to go. We thought it'd be kind of cool to study the idea of art on the second floor. Again, we're kind of envisioning this part being a little bit more, we're going to put a little money into some more windows or something that says this is the front of the school. Kind of didn't like that. Just, there's not a lot of windows in that, what's in the labeled community room. We thought this might be at least worth throwing out there, but have some shared storage between. And then restroom, therapeutic room, seclusion room, some of those things that were specifically discussed. And then we've got one room in this plan that's flexible for future, again, whether it's a 21st century learning room or it's a maker space, or you decide your programs need to have 3 different areas reconfigured. We thought that would be wise to have something for future flexibility. It's not a standard size classroom. Then the kind of the fun thing about this one then is most of the windows in the cafeteria are here, so we wanted to keep a low roof on either corner, have circulation as the stairs would come up, and you get up on the second floor here with an elevator. So you could queue right into the cafeteria or a separate entrance directly in the media center, so separate the cafeteria traffic from the media center traffic. Again, cafeteria media center where they are, kitchen where it is, and then just a slightly different configuration. Maybe just a little bit larger boardroom, create this middle part as a staff training and development space. Maybe we would have a operable partition or something that would give you flexibility on different size of groups going in there. Small group flex room, and then some support spaces for activities if there's that gymnasium is being used either for elementary or other community use. Just the idea of having activities, an office or some designated storage for something of that nature. So I think hopefully it didn't go too long, but that's a summary of where we are in terms of options and overall master plan process.
Board have any questions?
Dan, did you have anything you want to say?
No, not at this time. I mean, obviously, the budget is going to be coming soon, so this is, getting to this point and getting a plan that we can start putting pricing on is helpful.
And I will say your committee has been very good to work with. Our meetings, I don't know if it's me or if it's you guys, but they go from 2 hours to 3 hours to 3.5 hours.
The staff has had lots of thought-provoking conversations about how we can improve, what are we lacking, what improvements could we look for, what options are out there. So had lots of good conversations, I think, in reference to what's possible, not just what we have.
Right, I think there's been a lot of productive work from the leadership committee, and definitely want to say a big thank you to our staff that are participating in that.
I like the fact that you build in, or possibly build in, a community room. Because it seems like a community our size, we are lacking community rooms. And I think if we can, as a school system, use that aspect with the community use the community room, it's a win-win situation. So I like the fact that you had something like that.
Thank you.
I think the thing about that too is that with utilizing the student union and the addition, and then the house spaces still being separate, connected but separate, will allow us that flexibility to have more people in and secure the rest of the educational space as well.
The number of classrooms, we've built in flexibility there too. If you have a bubble class that needs more room.
Yeah, I mean, in each event, Alan, there's an extra room. And here there is here. They're set up for 6 sections at 120 or 6 sections at 25, no, 6 sections at 20 to get you to 120, which is tracking. I mean, your enrollment is on the decline. So I think
Except for this year.
we're not necessarily building in a bunch of extra, like we're not planning for 7 sections based on your enrollment trends, but we are planning for some flexibility. If we go back to the overall site plan, one of the questions that came up during our last planning session was, early on, one of our first meetings, we talked about, do we try to get the entire pre-K 5 plus daycare on this site? And I think at that time, I had some concerns just doing back of the napkin math, that it was going to be beyond what was feasible from a budget standpoint. I still will wait for Dan's number, but that's my intuition. The other thing is, I think if you can imagine another 30 to 40,000 square feet of orange on this plan. Do you have space that you could do it? Absolutely. Do we want to plan for some future growth? Yes, but I think philosophically, when we look at dividing the elementary into 2 attendance centers, there's some benefit in terms of having the younger together. The student count for 2 through 5 would be approximately 500. If we had pre-K through first grade, that would add about another 400. So sometimes if you get to an elementary that has 900, 1,000 kids, it adds some other complexities, like how do we effectively serve lunch for 1,000 kids instead of 500 kids, or how do we do PE programs? So it is possible, but I think there may be some hidden benefits to still having 2 attendance centers and how the grade levels would flow from one to the other, rather than having one massive, like, parent drop-off, busing, parking, all of those compound themselves when you have an attendance center. And there are certainly elementaries that are 800 to 1,000 kids, but usually those are on sites that have all that space for queuing and parking, maybe 2 gyms and that sort of thing. You start to get into the need for extra support space.
The meals would be prepared on the Van Allen side.
We talked about putting a
They have a
kitchen.
whole kitchen.
Well, we started with one, and then we started trying to keep costs down. I think if you invest in the cooking kitchen at Central Campus, which I think would be a good idea, the thought would be to only have 1 production kitchen for those 2 elementary centers. When we talked with the early childhood folks, they actually preferred not having the kids go to a cafeteria. They prefer more family style service, service in the rooms. So we went from having a production kitchen to just having a receiving warming kitchen for the early childhood, and then obviously we're going to be bringing food in to serve the cafeteria. But I think programmatically it will be a big improvement to have a separate cafeteria space so that gym can be better utilized.
It was on the wish list.
And one thing I like to see on the floor plans is a lot of, not just that flex classroom, but the intervention space. We're hearing from our elementary teachers that there's not enough room right now at the current buildings. So with the behavioral spaces, some breakout learning space that we don't currently have.
What do you guys think of the plan updates? Committee members. Well, sounds good. Well, our next step is to kind of package this information up a little bit, get it a little bit tighter for Dan to do his work. It'll probably take 2 to 3 weeks to do some cost estimating.
Will you go through that just one more time by us on this document?
Yeah, it's up at the top.
Oh, yeah.
So February cost estimating, I'll look on I think I've got our more detailed schedule here. We'll be getting back together. See here, 26 will be what we target for our next leadership committee meeting. And then we'll want to talk about some community engagement opportunities in the month of March. I know you've talked to Jerry,
Jerry Gallagher.
with the Donovan group, that there may be some communication strategies and some community engagement strategies. So that'll probably start to kick into gear. After Dan does the pricing, we get back together, we compare pricing, wish list, and then go try to figure out what those priorities are.
I assume the pricing will include resurfacing that big parking lot at Central Campus.
It can.
It's terrible.
It can include anything you want, but yes, we can.
Something, blacktop might be more efficient than cement, but something.
Yeah, we'll try to make Dan itemize that as much as we can. All right, well, I appreciate the opportunity to give you an update. You can always reach out to me if you have questions or comments along the way, and otherwise we'll probably, I think the next time we'd be back with the school board would be in your first March meeting, just to give an update on where we're at.
We didn't have the chapel.
Like the homeschool assistants.
Yeah, I apologize, I didn't.
I missed that too, yeah.
So I think I had it
Yeah.
in the plans, but I didn't get it. It was on the sort of repurpose for other facilities part. So we've done a preliminary layout to bring the homeschool assistance program into the lower level of the chapel. Basically trying to utilize the existing configuration to the best of our ability, have a check-in area, office, and then, basically a library workspace. So this was just a first pass at sort of an economical blend of existing walls and opening up some spaces. There's certainly more room to do other facility improvement needs down there. So I don't know if you've heard any feedback from that group or if we need to get back together with them. I think the option was put out. We just would welcome feedback on it.
No, we do. It's kind of bounced here and then there, and this is where we're at now, at this juncture.
But that's not requiring much change in the chapel.
No. No, I think as far as I know, there was one of the structural members needed to be repaired, and that's been done, and it's in use, and you guys are having programs there, so hopefully it's working well for you, and this would be a fairly minor, fairly straightforward approach, but the homeschool assistance program is connected with the central office. So at the point you decide you no longer want to lease, like yet another building in town, you want to get both of those programs accounted for.
And where will their parking be? At that new lot we're talking about?
Potentially. And there is, I think, some on-street parking.
And there's a small parking lot to the
Well, there's-
northeast, to the northwest of the building.
Kind of between there and the Old Main.
Right, we're gonna maybe add to the old main parking.
We haven't talked about that as of yet, but good question.
There's one. Is that on your wish list? Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, as far as we know, Old Main is continuing in its use. It's being leased out to PEO and the Symphony, and that's a workable arrangement. All right, any other questions? I don't know if you want me to take any questions from the audience, or what's the protocol there for tonight?
This was really just a work session, so we're just really sharing information. We could take a few specific questions.
I'm just wondering, like fire service, fire hydrants and everything, is there adequate water flow for that buildings and things like that are being thought of?
We haven't gotten to that level of detail. I know there are fire hydrants running along Lincoln. There will need to be some updates to some utilities through the, I think they're just on the north side of the Howe and the Student Union, that used to be a street at one point in time. So there are some utilities that will be part of reworking. So if there's not adequate service there now, obviously we need to make sure there is for new facilities.
I got a question. When you said it's 26 million to bond and borrow 11 million for future earnings, so what percentage is that borrow?
I may leave that one to you. I think the question is, So you have 3 different funding source options. One would be a general obligation bond, and you can borrow up to 270 or even 405 if the voters approve that limit. You've got sales tax money that comes in on an annual basis, and that has been saved in cash reserves and is, like the central bus maintenance facility is being funded out of some of those cash reserves. There's a process that a district, if they so choose, can borrow against sale, they can bond or borrow against sales tax money.
The future.
So the maximum that a district can borrow against future sales taxes, I believe about 78%, just based on how the bond financing works. Most districts that I've worked with don't borrow against all of their future sales tax. They say, this is for buildings, we've got one big building, and then we've got future years of replacing HVAC systems and buying buses. And so they may say, we feel comfortable in between our PEPAL money and our sales tax money that we could borrow 50% of the future income against a certain number of years, maybe 10 years or 20 years of that sales tax. So I don't know the exact percentage. I know you guys were wanting to hold at least $1 million a year in sales tax without having to borrow,
Yeah, our sales tax revenue each year is about 2.1 million, 2.2 million. It's a per pupil distribution by the Department of Revenue. But in this plan, we would hold back $1 million each year. That's about what we use each year for the projects that we enter into, whether it's maintenance, repair, upkeep, equipment. We plan for about $1 million, and again, the revenue we receive is just over $2 million.
And then I think there's also PEPAL money coming in that there was no discussion of using any PEPAL money for this. That would be completely for routine, ongoing costs.
So when you say borrow, is there interest on it?
Yeah, it would be like any other bond, so there's interest on it. I'm not the Piper Sandler guy, so I probably can't answer all your detailed questions.
What's that?
That is just a general question. One other one I had was the daycare center at one point. How is it going to be funded if it's something you choose to do? Where's the money coming from?
It would be part of this project.
Part of the whole bond issue. And if they're having trouble staffing for 40 kids now, how are you going to staff 80?
We're still in the preliminary phases. There's a lot of questions to answer. So it's something that we've gotten a lot of community feedback that it is needed. There's a big area to move students to New London for those things. So it's something that we have to explore to see how could we help with that solution? What part of the solution are we? So they're having conversations over building, staffing, all of that.
So we had a similar project in Washington where it was a joint effort between the school and the YMCA. In that case, the YMCA was the provider. Typically, somebody else provides the staff it so the school wouldn't have staffing costs. But then what the arrangements are for the lease or the use of the space, those are conversations that we haven't gotten that far yet.
So would somebody else manage it or would it be the school?
We don't know.
Okay.
That's the scenario I've seen most frequently as an independent operator, and there's a lease or 28E agreement or whatever between the school and the independent operator.
We've been working with the current daycare facility to discuss what their issues are, what our needs are as they form.
Regarding the full kitchen, is the district looking at providing or making in-house meals to the children or students? Or like, are you able to use the kitchens to actually make fresher food or?
So the thought of a second kitchen would be, so currently all of the buildings in town, the food is made here in high school, it would be in another kitchen. So then there would be two kitchens that would be all of the buildings. So you would increase your capacity of.
All right, well, again, thank you and appreciate the opportunity to give you an update.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, concludes our agenda. We will adjourn our meeting at 7:31. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
I've got my own best guess.
Yes.
It's very scientific.
It's good though. It's probably as close as we're gonna get.
I don't know if you want to loop in on that, we'll need to figure out
He's back there.
how to get you what you, I mean, we probably need more than just this. But it may be a collaborative, like, we've already done some budget, that's what's possible. Get you that, let's budget, check, and those are the parking. Might want to come up with a list. That X number of square feet.
I'm gonna make a phone call.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, leave.
Okay. I'll just go ahead and we'll get the posted on our website. Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah.